You just finished defining all the fire ratings for your doors, and they look perfect in your schedule. But when you're on site, flipping back and forth between the plan and the schedules is a total nightmare. Instead of fumbling through your sheets, imagine if the fire rating could live right in the floor plan, on the door tag itself. That's exactly what shared parameters let you do. Stick around for this video because we're going to show you the key to making your tags and schedules work together in the way that you've always wanted. Let's start with the definition of a shared parameter. A shared parameter in Revit is data stored in an external text file that can be reused across multiple projects and families. They enable consistent data, display in schedules and tags, and they maintain uniformity even when elements are swapped out. Unlike project or family parameters, shared parameters work across files, ensuring office-wide standards and control. These custom fields are stored in an external TXT file, making it reusable across families and projects. Jumping into the Revit interface, you'll want to navigate to Manage tab, and then under Settings, you'll see Shared Parameters. You'll see that we already have a shared parameter file set up, but if you wanted to create one from scratch, you click Create, and then name the text file as you wish. Click Save. You'll notice we have a clean dialog box now that allows us to create both parameter groups and parameters. And then you'll see in the shared parameter file, this is where the actual file is being referenced from. At the start, the only option on the right-hand side is to do a new group. You can name it however you want. If you are creating a new one, I would suggest creating a full list of all the parameters that you're planning on including. That way you can start to make these groups in a more informed way. Once we do that, we now have the option to rename the group or delete it. And then you also get the option to create a new parameter. Again, I always like to start off my shared parameters with the BD prefix. That lets us know that we've created it specifically for our company. You also have the option to set a discipline, create the data type. So we want to change that to text. And then you also have the option for a tooltip description. Once we click OK, we'll see now that we have this parameter, BD fire rating. Go ahead and click OK. Now that that's created, it's not necessarily in either the project or in the family yet. That is an extra step that we'll need to take. So to do that, we'll go edit our family. We do have an extensive series on how to edit and create Revit families. We would highly suggest going to watch that video series to get an in-depth understanding of how to do that. For the purposes of this video, we'll go ahead and show you how to associate a shared parameter. At the top, you'll click Family Types. You'll click New Parameter. You'll see similar to project parameters, you get a lot of the same options, but let's go ahead and check shared parameters instead of family parameter. And then let's click Select. And now you'll see that we have that shared parameter file open. We can see that our BD fire rating option is here. And then we also have the option to change the group here. And then you also need to set whether it's type or instance. And then you can also see that our tooltip description that we set previously is right here. Once we have that, let's go ahead and load this door back into the project and then overwrite the existing version. So if we click on our door now, we'll notice that we have two BD_fire rating. This actually can be quite confusing. The reason that this is, we set this up in our previous project parameter video, and Revit allows you to have different parameters of the same name. So it'll allow you to have duplicates. So I would suggest being very careful with how you're doing this. To get rid of this, let's go ahead and delete that project parameter. Now that we have that project parameter deleted, we're only seeing the shared parameter. Now that we have this set up, we can start to add this shared parameter to our schedules. You'll see that our BD fire rating is now included within the schedule, and we can use that in the same exact way that we are using the project parameters. Now you'll notice that if we wanted to start to tag this in our plans, our door tag, it's pretty non-dynamic, so it doesn't have the ability to show that information just yet. So if we want to add that information, go ahead and click on the tag, click Edit Family, and then within here, we're now in the Revit Family Editor for these annotation objects. So let's say we wanted to add this. There's a few different things here in how Revit actually communicates this information from family to schedule to the actual element itself. So these tag objects, they're actually created using a tag label. And what that is, if we click Edit, it's really just pulling the mark, so the door number essentially, and then showing a sample value here. But what we're telling Revit right now is that we just want this text information to read whatever it says in mark. So if we come back to our Revit family, let's click on our door and you'll see mark here 105C. That's actually displaying it here, 105C. So that's all we're doing here. And this is really made possible by shared parameters. There are a lot of system parameters that are built into Revit. And what I mean by that is that it comes preloaded into Revit and they can't be deleted. So a really good example is this mark here came preloaded with Revit and it cannot be deleted just because it's such an important part of what Revit uses. So in our case, let's go ahead to the Create tab and then click Label. From there, we have the option to click anywhere within the screen here. On the bottom left, let's go ahead and click the New button. Let's select our shared parameter. Again, we'll use the same exact BD_fire rating parameter. Click OK. And then once it's loaded here, you'll see that we have this green arrow to the right. You can click over, and then we'll now see this BD fire rating. If you would like, you can do a sample text here. Click OK. And now you'll see that we have our 90-minute, so that's sample text, and we can locate it really wherever we want within this tag. One alternative option here is to enlarge the tag. Click Edit, and then in BD fire rating, you can do the same green arrow, and then we can say 90-minute for our sample text, and then click OK. Then now you'll notice that we have our door mark and our fire rating. This essentially just puts multiple parameters in the same exact label. Some other nice features here, we can add a prefix. So let's say we wanted a dash in between. It'll automatically add that dash between the two parameter types. Suffix, essentially the same thing as the prefix, except it puts it behind the value. And then let's remove that. You can also do a break. And what that means is that it will actually show that parameter as a new line. So you'll notice that our lines, they're not necessarily correlated anymore with this. These are really just simple annotation detail lines within here. If you were to go about doing this, you would need to kind of adjust how your lines are showing relative to the information that you want to show. So to undo this, let's go ahead and load this tag back into our project, overwrite the existing. And now we'll see if we click on the tag, there's now a question mark. So the reason there's a question mark here, it's because there is no value currently within that parameter within this door. So let's go ahead and click on the door, scroll down to our shared parameter, and then enter in exactly the value that we want. And we'll see now that we have our door tag, and then it shows 60 minutes below that. So that's how you know it's reading directly from the actual door and it's not coming from either the tag or some other location. So now that we have this all set up, you can actually modify these values within the tag itself. So you can click on it and then edit the text the way that you want it. And then if we come back to our door schedule, you'll notice now all of these doors that had that information populated, it's now coordinated across. So this is really something that is a humongous advantage for Revit. It's all reading from the same location. So if you modify it one place, it is going to modify it everywhere. So in AutoCAD, when you used to have to do this, you would have to manually type it in the text in your schedule, and then you'd have to go to the plan and type that same exact text. If this were to happen frequently in revisions and stuff, that's when you would get into trouble because sometimes the information wouldn't be carried across the entire set. This way, if we make a modification here, go back to our floor plan, you'll notice now that 45 minutes directly here was automatically updated in plan, schedule, and in our shared parameter data box. Let's discuss some of the pros and cons of using shared parameters. The pros, so this is something that's standardized across projects, teams, and families. This is really something that you're setting up early on, adding to as needed, and then that gets reflected kind of across the projects. They're not linked to specific projects, so if you do have to make an alteration, it's not like you're making alterations to a series of different families or a series of different projects firm-wide. It's just something that is controlled when you're setting up the beginning of your Revit. Shared parameters are essential for tags and coordinated BIM workflows. And shared parameters also save time on documentation and are a fantastic quality assurance method, making sure that you are showing the correct information in all the locations that you choose to show it. The cons of shared parameters, the setup can take kind of a long time, especially when compared to project parameters. Your shared parameter file is really something that you're going to want to think about pretty far in depth and plan for. You even might want to get several people involved just to get their opinions. They're easy to lose track of if you don't manage the text file properly. If you accidentally create a duplicate, just because the shared parameter is named the same doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to read across the files, so your project and your family files. Once you create a parameter in a shared parameter file, it actually is given a very specific ID tag. So that's what Revit is reading, is that ID tag, not necessarily the text common name of that shared parameter. And lastly, the shared parameter file, it really requires standards and disciplines to stay clean. You'll want to limit the amount of people that are getting in there and modifying it, just because a lot of times people will apply their own standards to things. So having one or two people be in control of the shared parameters is really the best way to make it clean and readable for a large group of people. Best practices for the shared parameter file: keep it in a central location for your team to access, especially if they are creating a lot of families. You always want to be working off the most up-to-date shared parameter file just to avoid any duplications of parameters or having mismatched shared parameter files. You need to use clear and consistent naming conventions. So like I said earlier, always starting with your firm abbreviation, underscore, and then you can also say the type of parameter it is, whether it's instance or type. We like to keep it simple just to keep things fluid and dynamic. It's always good to document clearly what each parameter does. This will help avoid duplication. Only make shared parameters when you need tagging or multi-project consistency. At BIM Depot, all our families are built with clean, consistent shared parameters. They're also integrated into our BIM Depot Revit template, so that means you just drop the families into the template and you're ready to start tagging and scheduling right away. If you learned something new, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe for the other videos within this series. Next up, we're going to look at global parameters. Not many people know about global parameters. They're the secret to controlling parameters across your model, all in a single location. You don't want to miss this next one.